This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You are tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. What a NBA run thus far, and it now comes down to the final two teams, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors, and we have got such a jam-packed episode, lots of things to discuss, but man, you couldn't ask for better NBA drama than what we've had witnessing over the last few days, and I'm excited about, getting right into it. I know the teams are ready to get it on. We've been waiting for this matchup to happen a lot better than we were waiting for Pacquiao and Mayweather, but to give us the knockout blows, I got to do it, my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, dime mag contributor. I call him the Eddie Roach of the NBA with his insight. He's my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. How about that right-left cross combination with the Warriors and the Thunder in that 7-game fight night?
That was an epic fight night, man. Definitely reminiscent of some of the great battles of the NBA history. And dude, you're right. It was a heavyweight bout watching those two teams go into 7 games. But first and foremost, salute to all the fans listeners of NBA Baseline. Thank you for tuning in with us for another week. A great show ahead, talking NBA Finals, talking to some teams that are no longer with us now as well, too. And another great guest, on this week's show. So we can't wait to jump right into it. And as always, I'll let my man Silly CL give you the details.
Most definitely, man. And listen, it's all about the NBA Finals, and that will be the big topic of conversation. But even bigger is the guest that we are going to have on. She is just one of the great personalities. We've known her for a long time. She is not afraid to give her sports mind and dispense it. She runs with a lot of people through social media, and what she does on camera. It's the lovely Porscha Coleman. She's going to be on with us to help us preview the NBA Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. Of course, we have our segment of The Drop, where because now we're talking NBA Finals, that means two teams were not able to advance, that being the Toronto Raptors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, of course, that's that segment for these dudes to just go on and get. And then, of course, we got our coveted Coast to Coast, where we go over the news happening in the association. So much happening, so much to discuss. And we are just so grateful and thankful that you guys are on board, listening, downloading, and discussing as we give you the goods, discussing the stuff that's happening with the NBA. Of course, you know how to get at my man Shaw, at Shaw Sports NBA, or get at me at GameFace Lee. But we always encourage you to get at the show's Twitter handle, at NBA_the baseline. Hashtag up the baseline. Let us know who you are and what you're about. Available on all the major platforms: iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Player FM, Microsoft TuneIn. Also available on Roku through my man ShawSports.net, the Shaw Sports channel. Be sure to check it out. And we're also available on Google Music. So please download any one of these platforms. Give yourself an opportunity and a chance. Download and discuss. Allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things in the NBA. You know how we do, and we really cannot wait for us to set this off. It is time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it
I
down.
break it down to the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And then there are two. And I don't know if anybody was expecting it to happen the way that it's happened, but I think the NBA community and everybody around the world is quite happy that we're going to see the rematch between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. And what better way for us to lead our peoples into this titanic rematch than having really one of the more titanic personalities that is just clearing out all over on the TV screens. She's been doing her thing for so long. We met her way back when at the NBA All-Star Weekend in Dallas. Just one of the great personalities and great people that's doing their thing. Our girl, Porscha Coleman. You can catch her and sing, act, and dance. She is the host. What is going on, Porscha?
Not much, guys. How are you? I love the intro. That was incredible.
Thank you. Well, listen, you're incredible. And it's just absolutely incredible that three like-minded people who just watched an amazing finals Game 7 situation between Golden State, Oklahoma City. And now we know that Golden State will give themselves an opportunity to defend the title. And really, what everyone is talking about, Was it a fluke last year that the Cleveland Cavaliers, losing in this finals was because they didn't have Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love? Did the Warriors really deserve their title and their props? And I got to ask you, Porscha, I mean, we've heard around the rumor mills, is it really like that? Should we now be doubting the resolve and the resiliency that I believe is what got them that championship last year anyway, that they should be respected and feared more so than being told that these guys lucked themselves into winning a championship?
Absolutely. I feel that every time I hear, LeBron's been there, 6 times, and, he won 2 of them, but he really should have more because, this person was hurt and he wasn't 100%. Listen, bump that. That's whack. Because guess what? All is fair in love and war, and this is the game, right? So it's unfortunate when certain players get hurt. Chris Bosh gets hurt, when he's in Miami, and other people were hurt that affected the game. But at the same time, last year, the Warriors, you tell me what different things that they've done to where we've questioned how good they are. Only time I think they were questioned all season was in the last few games when they were down 3-1. And then all of a sudden, all the analysts and everybody was thinking, oh no, what are we going to do? It might be a wrap for Golden State. But a lot of fans still figured if there's any team that could come back, it would be the Golden State Warriors. And that's exactly what I thought. I was rooting. I am a big fan of Russ and Kevin Durant, Serge Ibaka. I mean, that whole lineup is insane. So on paper, it really looked like they should have won it based on their lead, based on the momentum winning game 1 at Oracle. I mean, I figured it would go 7 at this point because they had the momentum and the ball was in their court. But to drop 3 in a row and to have that team come back the way they did, how can you question how good they are? And it's going to be so good to see them this year playing against LeBron when he has a quote unquote healthy team. So hopefully they can beat them again and say, now what? Now you got a question about how great I am. I'm the MVP. And my team is legit. Now what?
I think that's a great take there, Porscha. And as we focus on the NBA Finals conversation and discussion, it really does speak to a lot about what Golden State has done. But I want to ask you this specific situation or a specific question.
Okay.
Who do you think has the advantage now in terms of not necessarily asking for a prediction, but who do you think has the advantage going into the series? Golden State now having played 7 games, coming off a very emotional series with the Oklahoma City Thunder, while the Cavs have pretty much not say coasted, but they've coasted.
No, they've coasted.
they've
absolutely
chilled out.
coasted. Oh no, you can take that back on a big. Oh no, they did. They coasted all the way. I personally would give the advantage right now still to the Golden State Warriors because they've fought, they've battled, they've played, and their heart is so in it. I'm not taking, the Cavaliers don't have heart by far. That's not what I'm saying. And it just so happens that the Eastern Conference was just a lighter, it always is when you really look at it. It's been that lightweight for a while now. So I do feel like people give LeBron such a pass all the time by saying, oh, well, he coasted and coasted, but then they don't want to give him a pass when he loses in the finals. If you coasting the whole time and then you lose, you're still a loser. So I feel right now that the Golden State Warriors have the upper hand, having the home game advantage, and also just having that momentum to be ready. They're going to be hungry, and I just give them all the momentum right now. And it's going to be interesting just to see the back and forth, to see who responds and who can really win in the other one's home. That's really what's going to come down to, is who can win the road games.
Porscha Coleman joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast, a segment of the breakdown discussing the conference finals, the rematch between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. Porscha, to add on to your point, because I think it's an excellent point. It's interesting. We talk about how, the Miami Heat, back in 2011, they pretty much had coasted, through to get themselves in that position. And then they got punched in the mouth by the Dallas Mavericks. And I feel like, this is what it comes down to. Will LeBron's team be prepared to counter when the Golden State Warriors tries to punch him in the mouth? I don't think LeBron is going to be the issue as much as the rest of the team is going to be the issue. And it's interesting, while everybody is looking at this Cleveland Cavaliers team as the greatest show on the parquet floor, the Golden State Warriors have really gotten by with subpar performances from what has made them this championship historic run team, with the 73 wins, is the depth in this team, the strength in numbers per se. The rest of this team has not been, playing to the level that I think that they know that they're capable of playing, that got them to 73 wins this year. And it's be interesting if this trend continues for them now that they're in the final stage, right? This is the finals. It's what it all comes down to. So I'm curious from you. I'm curious from your perspective, who is it that you think really needs to step up to help? It can't just be Steph Curry and Klay Thompson like it was in this series. Who do you think really needs to be the big X factor for the Warriors to supplant themselves to win this championship?
Yeah, and to seal the deal. Well, I really think, in a certain sense, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. They had the momentum. They really had the upper hand, I think, from day one in this series. And it just so happens that none of the Warriors were really playing great. Like you said, every game I was like, where's Harrison Barnes? I said, where's Bogut? I was like, any day now, Iguodala. I was really questioning the whole lineup, like saying, hello, guys, we're playing a game here. What's going on? I mean, even Barbosa, somebody has to step up. And I'm telling you, if they end up winning the championship, it's really going to be, Klay Thompson won game 6 for them to be even to have the opportunity to have a game 7 back at Oracle. So it's going to be interesting to see if they say, okay, guys, we really played our asses off, but now it's really time to buckle up and put on these big boy pants. And every last one of our starters and you bench players have to, even James Michael McAdoo, I'm pointing you out too. You got to have some punch.
He was looking kind of nice with the polka dot and the polka dot shirt and tie.
Exactly.
But I didn't see him getting any run on the basketball court, right? So
he never got any run. But I do know that a couple times he did get a run. Michael McAdoo put up some nice numbers. So I think at this point, Kerr has to have faith that he knows that these guys can come off the bench and really do a great performance, because they weren't really amazing in this series at all off the bench. But the OKC Thunder came with it. So really it was them. They lost it in comparison just to all of a sudden the Warriors just truly beating them down. No, it's just the Thunder didn't have that fourth quarter hustle bustle and know how to close game situations, like the Warriors did. So I absolutely think that they have to do better to have a shot against, Kevin Love and Kyrie and, JR Swish is, he's hot or sometimes he's not. But when he's hot, he's really hot. And that's just the difference. I think that they have a lot of people that can really put up big numbers, but the Warriors have to come with it too, so they can compete and go, back and forth and go toe to toe with them.
I think that's a great point, and even leads to the next question. I think because if you look at the Cavaliers, they've had some success playing in multiple ways. They've gone with the traditional lineup, playing Tristan at the 5. Then you saw in the Detroit series, they had a lot of great success playing Love at the 5 and putting LeBron at the 4. There's a lot of discussion about the Warriors lineup of death, which actually did not really work for them so much in this Oklahoma City Thunder series. Now, you have to wonder now, do they go back to that, trying to have that success? Because that's what they did last year against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was without Love and that was without Kyrie. Do you think the small ball matchup favors either one of these teams going into the NBA Finals?
Woo! I think the small ball favors, I actually think it favors both of them, because if we're looking at depth, Oklahoma City had the most depth overall as far as the team. So, I think going small is going to be the advantage for both of the teams. And it's a matter of staying out of foul trouble. You had the very last game, Draymond Green had 5 fouls with 6 points. We can't have that, Draymond. There's no way that we can expect that to fly against, a Kyrie Irving. And again, like I said, JR and guys who can put up big numbers. They're going to play small ball and they're going to, try to keep up with the pace of the Warriors. But the good thing is that the Warriors can outpace them in a certain sense. Because right now, let's be real, like you said, they've coasted their way there. The Warriors have had to fight, hustle, run up and down. They tired out there. So it's going to be interesting to see when the Warriors come out and say, okay, cool, it's game time, how fast they can keep up with them. Because the way they play is definitely very different. So I think they're going to want to slow them down. The Cavaliers are going to want to slow the Warriors down. And that's when, it can kind of get tricky. But if the Warriors stick to their game and their ball and keeping it fast paced, I think they still have the advantage over them.
She hosts Sing, Act, and Dance. And you can also catch her on Twitter at Porscha Coleman. Porscha, one of the things that I find interesting, and we don't, often most of the people that we usually have on our show are, media analysts, people that are heavily in the NBA industry and covering the sports via through the blogs and television and periodicals and stuff. But for the casual fan, what about this matchup really stands out for you?
Oh, the storyline, like you said, that there's so many because everything that you just named is exactly the situation right now. Both teams have so much to prove. Like you said, I give my hats off to LeBron James for doing what he did last year, seeing that he didn't have the help necessary. But guess what? It's still a game, and the Warriors took it. So I think the headline for this year is still going to be about Steph Curry because you can't come in the game and break the record, break the Bulls record, win the actual MVP, and not come out a winner. I think that is the bigger deal. I know it's going to be the redemption. Oh, can LeBron do it this time? Everybody's healthy. Now they're going toe to toe. Yeah, that's all good and fine. But I think to break the record and to not close the deal is going to be a bigger talk than LeBron finally getting his redemption. So I think the headline would definitely be, Steph Curry MVP and the Golden State Warriors are the NBA champs after breaking the record. I mean, that is what I call a season worth 1,000 words because I just don't feel that the Golden State Warriors are going to feel anything if they don't win this, seeing that they broke the record and that everything that they've done is gonna like go to waste. Who cares if you broke the record? They won rings.
Good point. Good point. And I thought there's another minor storyline here. I thought CL was going to bring it up. Even with Varejao now coming back home to play against his former team.
No fair, Varejao.
I mean, that's
right?
obviously very, very minor, but it is something to kind of pay attention to.
Yeah.
But on the other side of things too, looking at it from a defensive standpoint, listen, there was a lot of talk going back to last year where Dellavedova was kind of bothering Curry the first few games, and people went so far as to say Dellavedova is the Curry stopper. I mean, which was absolutely ridiculous. But
oh, please, that is so ridiculous.
was ridiculous, and we found out that it was ridiculous as Curry, found his.
Yeah.
So
Nova. He's no.
Yeah. So when it comes down to it now, obviously Kyrie's back, so he's going to get the bulk of those minutes there. But I'm really interested to see how Golden State answers things when Dellavedova is in or when Shumpert's in, as they try to slow down some of Golden State shooters. Because I think conversely, I guess I should ask, do you think conversely, do you see them doing something similar that they did to Roberson in this series, where Dellavedova can shoot the three, but do you see them leaving Shumpert or somebody like that wide open, say, you know what, you go ahead and beat us, and we'll play 5-on-4 when it comes to the defensive side of things? Do you think that's a strategy that Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors can employ?
Absolutely. I think so because, well, for one, to me, not taking any credit away from him, Dellavedova is not, consistent either. You know what I'm saying? It's like a 30-point game and then a 5-point game. So I don't really think that Dellavedova is their biggest worry. Like you said, I would, be worried about J.R. Smith and Shumpert getting hot on the same night that, that Kevin Love, Kyrie, and LeBron want to all go off for, 20 to 25 points. Then we have a problem. And that's just one of those nights where you're like, okay, this is unstoppable and we have no answer. Other than that, I definitely think that you have to focus on your own game. And I think the moment you switch from your game to the opponent's game is where it could, you always want to have them switch for you, not the other way around. You know what I'm saying? Like, do your game that works. Golden State Warriors have a set regimen and how they do things, and people fall for it every time. And I think that's what happened with OKC. They tried to play at the pace of OKC, and then you saw Serge Ibaka trying to hit threes. Granted, he can hit some on a good night, but he started relying on threes as if he was Klay Thompson or Steph Curry, and that's not his game. And that's what happens when you start playing a team of that caliber. You start playing like that, and that's not what you need to do. Cleveland needs to stick to their game. The Warriors need to stick to their game, and whoever concedes first, that's who's going to kind of end up not doing too great because their games are totally different. So don't change for the next team. Stick to your game, and the other team has to just hopefully play at your pace.
Porscha, one of the other outliers I think that is going to be discussed clearly is going to be Tyronn Lue, the head coach, coming in under the kind of scrutiny with the situation that happened with David Blatt, and the fact that, look, he's you consider him a rookie head coach, right? And this rookie head coach helped this Cleveland Cavaliers team pretty much run roughshod in the Eastern Conference to the finals. And now he has an opportunity to probably help LeBron James do what he couldn't help LeBron James do back in 2007, which is win a championship. How important is Tyronn Lue's influence going to be on this basketball team to weather whatever storm Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson may bring to the table for them to win this series?
Well, I think, for starters, I mean, there's some pressure on Tyronn Lue, but I don't think it's the same amount of pressure as it would be on Steve Kerr. I mean, Tyronn Lue, like you said, granted in 07, and he's been around LeBron, and I think you can definitely see the respect level is different. For him to come out and say that he had to check LeBron a couple of times and say, no, this ain't your team, this is my team, sit down. I respect that, because David Blatt was getting ran over. The other guys, I don't think that were as respected by LeBron, and I think Tyronn Lue definitely has his work cut out. But I do think that Steph Curry has more work cut out, because mind you, he missed half of the season when he was hurt, and let's give it up to our new Lakers coach, for going out there and doing the job that he did. So personally, who has a tougher job, I definitely would think it would be Steve Kerr, because this team almost did not make it to the finals. So he has a lot to prove. Let them drop 2 games back to back, and all of a sudden, oh God, Steve Kerr's not handled. What's going wrong? He's not equipped for this, and it's just like it switches so fast. So I think Tyronn Lue, being a rookie head coach, it's your rookie year. So if you don't win, oh well, you're a rookie. You didn't know what you were doing necessarily. It's your first run at it. So I don't think he has anything to lose necessarily, like I think a Steve Kerr has, because he's a returning head coach and a returning champion. They always have the most to prove. Someone's trying to strip your title, and they have to be damn good to do it. So whoever can do that, if it happens, kudos to them. But I think Steve Kerr has more the hard work right now.
So before we let you get out of here, a couple things before you ride on out. And, for those who don't follow her on Twitter, I mean, she's a great follower, always, talking about everything, from social media,
Yeah.
To sports, even politics, it's Memorial Day, you're saluting the veterans like that. But one of my favorite things that you do, is the Porsche Center update, if you will. And so so my question to you is, when it all is said and done, these NBA finals are concluded, the Porsche Center update is going to say which team has won and how many games.
Oh, man, the Porsche Center update is going to say the Golden State Warriors have won the NBA title in 6. Boom, that's my prediction. I'm going to ride with it right now. Like I said, I'm a West Coast girl. I like the Warriors in their game, so I'm going to ride with them. That's my prediction. Hashtag Porsche Center updates. Follow her on Twitter. That's me. I'm speaking in third person like it's not me, but that's just my prediction right now. But I think
we were talking, Porsche Center update, Coleman. Is that, what I'm saying? So it's all good, definitely.
I know. I love it. People have no idea. Like, people that really know me know how much I love sports and how passionate I am. But other people that don't are just so surprised. Like, even when I went to All-Star Weekend to interview, a lot of the athletes down there, they look at me like, oh my God, this entertainer girl knows sports, and it's crazy. So like I said, if it was my choice, I'd be on Sports Nation, me, Michelle Beadle, Marcellus Wiley, and all of us sitting at the table like talking about it. I love sports, so I always love to watch it, and it just gets me hyped to see such athleticism out there. And I mean, it sucks right now. I mean, right now the Warriors are celebrating, and OKC is on a plane back home. I feel so bad for Russell Westbrook and Serge Ibaka and KD. I really do, because they're good guys, and I really thought that they were going to pull it out. When they were up 3-1, I thought it was there. But, like I said, they're champions, so I got to ride with my champs. Got to ride with the Warriors.
Definitely. Porscha, before we let you go, give our peoples, our audiences who listen to the Baseline NBA podcast, and again, you're such a great person, great personality. You got so many things going on. What do you have on your plate going down? Where should people be catching you and checking you do your thing?
Of course, you guys definitely follow me. Twitter at Porscha Coleman. Same thing with Instagram, Porscha Coleman. My Facebook is Porscha Coleman Official, and my website, Porscha Coleman. And then I always update and let you guys know what I'm doing. I just shot a commercial 2 weeks ago with MC Hammer, and then I just did a TV show. So everything, like I said, in this business.
He give you his pants?
Listen,
please tell me he gave you his pants.
My pants. I said I'll let you use my pants today. No, Hammer's dude, the Hammer pants are big in the dance. You don't even know. That's a big deal. So many things change in entertainment. You could audition for something tomorrow, and next you know, you could be a series regular somewhere. So it's literally a day-to-day thing in this industry. And I last week had a really big blessing. So as soon as I can, talk about it and preach on it, you guys definitely be the first ones to know about it, because I'm excited. But a lot of good things are in the air. So definitely follow me and keep in touch. And I definitely reply back and, say hey to my fans. They're not fans. I call them friends. Like, if you're on my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we're friends. You ain't a fan, we're friends. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, listen, you couldn't have a better friend who talks great basketball, covers boxing, does entertainment,
Yes.
hosts, sing, act, and dance. She's a West Coast girl, but we always give her East Coast love.
Yeah.
The one and only Miss Porscha Coleman. Porscha, we thank you so much for hopping on and really helping to accentuate
Thank you.
our first our first NBA Finals preview. It's going to be really exciting, and we can't wait to get you back on here again because we definitely need to get our Porsche Center update.
Da-na-na, Porsche Center. I need my background music. That's perfect.
That's what's up.
Porsche Center. But no, thank you guys for having me. Love the show. I appreciate it. Now I'll definitely pop back in and say hey to you guys soon.
Awesome. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And of course, when we do The Drop in this time of the year, man, we put emphasis and we talk about, obviously the teams that have moved forward to the NBA Finals. And clearly we have to talk about the teams that wind up having to go home. And unfortunately, the Toronto Raptors is one of the teams that has to go on home. So, of course, that's our time in The Drop, our segment where we call it Go On and Get. And really, man, Shaw, when you talk about this Toronto Raptors team and you talk about what this team has done this season, really a phenomenal job, a phenomenal effort up and down the organization to the, from management all the way down to the players, to the fan base. They have revived and really rejuvenated the reason why we talk about the NBA being a global brand, being a global sport. What the fans were able to give us every single game, win or lose. And listen, the Raptors, man, they suffered some beatdowns in this Eastern Conference Finals. But I really think that this is a wake-up call. I think before I questioned the validity of this Raptors team, of whether or not they could potentially be a really good basketball team. And despite them losing, I have a lot more confidence about this Toronto Raptors team if they keep this team together. A few additional pieces that Masai Ujiri, I'm sure, has gotten in the works for what he's seen this team accomplish already this year. This is going to be a very dangerous basketball team. And couple that with a couple of other teams that we've seen already who have entered into the playoff realm, Shaw. This is a team not to be overlooked because I really think that they're going to shake things up. And maybe that window we're talking about of Believe Land, Cleveland winning some championships, it might get narrowed down if we're going to see what we've seen from DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, and these boys.
Well, it's great that you started with DeRozan there, I think, because I think he's the key to what Toronto is going to do in the future. He's going to opt out. That much is for certain. And then the Raptors will be offering him a max deal. Depends who you believe. His post-game presser, if you will, or his exit interview, rather, kind of made it seem like he really was going to give Toronto every opportunity to re-sign him. The Lakers are going to have interest, and a bunch of other teams are going to have interest in him as well. But DeRozan, I think he knows where his bread is buttered at, and I think Toronto seems like the best landing spot for him. But if he does leave, that would thrust Jonas Valanciunas into the number 2 role per se, and that's in a year where he's now going to earn a lot more money after signing his contract extension, slated to make $14.3 million next year. And I think he's ready to take on the role of a number 2 guy and a lead guy in the post on a regular basis. But it really does depend what happens with Lowry. With DeRozan, and then they have Biyombo as a free agent, Luis Scola as a free agent as well too. Those guys have played big keys to Toronto. So when you come to thinking about, okay, is this team going to be back and be able to make another run next season, they got to take care of home first. I have all the utmost faith in Masai, what he's been able to do, and I think they're going to even re-up Dwayne Casey this summer as well, but they have some holes that they need to fill.
Well, I think, Shaw, you bring up some excellent points with reference to the impact of DeMar DeRozan and the steps that are going to lead to whether or not the Toronto Raptors are going to be able to retain him. It's interesting because on the recent podcast that I jumped on, which is Buckets and Dimes, and if you guys haven't had an opportunity to check out the Buckets and Dimes podcast or the Buckets and Dimes show, I would encourage you to do so. Guys, they do such an excellent job covering stuff on the NBA, and we've worked with these guys before, and they're really great guys. And we've had the conversation about Toronto, and I said, if you're DeMar DeRozan and you are trying to mark a level of greatness of what you're capable of doing in this league, you really have to look at the big picture. And I understand from a market value perspective, going to another team, possibly playing and getting, big dollars, and maybe a team like the Los Angeles Lakers or other teams and things of that nature are going to look to try to build around you. But what exactly are you building around? Are you building around your brand? Are you building around a cornerstone of what you can do for the NBA? Or are you building around opportunities to win championships? And I feel like if you're DeMar DeRozan, forget all of this, all of everything that we're talking about regarding the money, because I don't think the money is going to be the issue. The issue is, what is it that you're leaving for? And what is it that you're leaving behind? And ultimately, I think if you're DeMar DeRozan, you have to think about who you're leaving, who you'd be leaving to, and who you're leaving for. If you go to the Los Angeles Lakers, you're going to Mitch Kupchak, and you're going to an organization that really still seems to be very dysfunctional and doesn't have it all together. So I don't know what they can sell you that you haven't already gotten from Masai Ujiri, who clearly has put his and this basketball team's best interest at heart to see what they've done over the last 3-4 years. And I think if you're DeMar DeRozan, you have to rely on that. Wherever you're going, it can't just be about playing for that market and that team. It has to be playing under an organization that is looking to win, and it'll do whatever it takes to win. And I think we've seen that from Masai Ujiri. And sometimes we don't discuss this, Shaw. I know that we do discuss it because we talk about how important executives play in the benefactors of teams establishing themselves and establishing their brand and their greatness for years to come. It's why we're talking about Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. It's why we're talking about the Miami Heat because of Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. It's why we talk about the San Antonio Spurs, and a lot of these other teams that are striving to quote unquote mimic the plan. It comes down to the executives and the general managers that they have in place that are going out there to truly execute that plan. If you're DeMar DeRozan, you have to weigh Masai Ujiri's influence and what he's done for the Toronto Raptors community and the Toronto Raptors organization as a weighing factor for you to establish your level of greatness and ascension to winning a possible championship sooner, rather than trying to restart with some of these other teams that are out there.
Well, I think when you say that, it really does matter. It depends on what he wants, and I think those are all great points. But is it a matter of him wanting to go to a bigger market, period, and then just being in that market to try to succeed his own brand, if you will, or is he trying to win and build a legacy as a team player who can be one of the lead guys on a roster? But I think if that's the situation, then Toronto is his best bet. But there are other teams out there that are linked to him. Like I said, the Lakers are going to be linked to him because that's his hometown. The Knicks are going to be linked to them because, hey, they want a star. But are the Lakers and Knicks anywhere? They're definitely not anywhere closer to a championship than Toronto is. Toronto is leaps and bounds better than those teams. But take a team like Memphis, who can definitely use some wing support and some scoring on the wing and from mid range. That's a great team for DeRozan if he was looking to try to build his brand, and not trying to necessarily build his brand, but going to a winning situation. But I don't think he's looking at that from that standpoint. I think it's either I'm going to try to go to a major market, or I'm going to try to win it and stay here in Toronto. I don't think he's looking at all the other factors that maybe he should be in this situation. But listen, the Raptors are still going to be in good situation or good position, if he decides to leave, because I really do believe Valanciunas can be a guy who can give you 17 and 10 a night if he becomes a focal point of an offense. And I trust Casey now. And I can say this point blank, I didn't trust him last year, but I trust him now to find a way to get those guys to believe and to be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. Maybe they don't win, 50 plus games again, and they could probably still win the Atlantic Division. But obviously, a lot of things have to still come into play with that. But I really do trust Casey and Masai to fill out this roster, whether or not DeRozan stays or whether he decides to go somewhere else.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our segment of The Drop, as we have our go on get Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals version. And in this case, we're talking about the Toronto Raptors, who unfortunately lose in 6 games to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's time for them to go on and get Shaw. So where do you think the biggest upgrade needs to take place? Like, other than DeMar DeRozan, where should be the focal point if you are Masai Ujiri and you're that Toronto Raptors organization? What is it that you really feel like we need to definitely get an upgrade to bolster this roster to supplement if we do get DeMar DeRozan and the Kyle Lowry combination back again for next year?
Yeah, it's the fourth position. The power forward position is something that they had been has been much maligned. They were in a million and one rumors about trying to acquire any fours that were available over the course of the year. Again, Scola is 36 years old, going to be 37, probably going to be out of there next year. Patrick Patterson, he's just not a starter in this league. A nice guy, good role player, but I just don't think he's a starting power forward in this league. And I mean, they could try to entertain something really crazy and go super big with Biyombo and Valanciunas. But again, Biyombo is probably going to be commanding, 10 to $15 million a year next year. I don't know if they'll have all the money to resign him, especially if DeRozan does come back. But the four position is where I think they need to focus on the most, and decide how they want to play. Do they want a guy who can space the floor for them, and then be a good defender, or do they want a guy who can kind of give them some of the same thing that Valanciunas does, but still be able to go out on the floor a little bit as well, so that he can operate down low. That's the area I think they need to focus on the most.
All right, so when we talk about this season in its totality, Shaw, how do you sum it up? Is the best way to describe what this Toronto Raptors team was able to do?
I think they slightly overachieved. I mean, getting to the Eastern Conference Finals is no small feat for any team. And then if we look at the rest of the East, you kind of say, all right, well, who else should have gotten there? And yeah, obviously the next possible team is maybe you think Miami should have been there, but and then maybe even Chicago, and they had those issues that they had this year. But I think Toronto overachieved slightly. Casey said as much himself. He feels like that leap they took this year was tremendous, but he knows and admittedly say that leap from conference finals team to NBA champion is a whole nother thing that he doesn't know if they're ready for just yet. But I still feel like this is a team that is definitely heading in the right direction. DeMar Carroll, remember, he was hurt most of the year too, so they're going to hopefully have him back and get him in the fold for a full entire season. And whatever other pieces they add around this team, they still have the 9th pick in the draft this year too, assuming they keep that pick. And this is a team that could very well be right back where we saw them this year. And maybe in their case, they're hoping a little bit beyond that.
Yeah, Shaw, let me give you get this quick follow-up question because of what you just mentioned and what you said, and this team elevating from being a finals participant to being a possible NBA championship. What would be the easiest route in order for this to be achieved if you're the Toronto Raptors? Is it looking for greatness between Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan to be one of them to be there, LeBron James? Or is it the pieces that are necessary for Masai Ujiri to build a team that collectively has depth and that can collectively win basketball games at a rate and a clip very similar to like teams like the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs?
Yeah, I think they need a little bit more fine tuning overall on both sides of the basketball. I mean, look at this team; they were 14th, middle of the pack, in offense, and they were 11th in defensive rating. So they're 5th in offensive rating and 11th in defensive rating, but 14th in points per game. I think they need a little more seasoning all around. And then you have that continuity, that continuation of maturation between players and chemistry that continues to build. If they continue to throw different pieces and parts in here, they're going to have some difficulty reaching that next level. And that's why you would hope, again, DeRozan comes back. Maybe they get, I don't think James Johnson or anybody like that's going to come back. But if they get Biyombo to come back too as well, that is a core of guys who already know what it takes, for them to work together and to play together to reach a certain level of success. Then you bring in one or two more pieces to help give some depth to that bench, give you some more perimeter shooting too, because they still don't have any knockdown 3-point shooters on this team yet. I think if you get that, fill out the 4 position, then you really have something here too. But I don't know that they can reach a Cleveland's level right now, based on what they have and just making one small change. They need a lot more, and I think Casey and Masai both recognize that.
All right, Shaw, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about what arguably is one of the best Western Conference Finals that I think we've seen in recent years. And listen, make no bones about the job OKC, the effort, that OKC has put forth. You kind of really feel bad because any one of these teams would have been deserving to go to an NBA Finals. And, subtract all of the hoopla about the status of Kevin Durant. This is probably one of the great combinations, young combinations that has so much potential. And to see these guys make it to the Western Conference Finals on 3 different occasions with this combination of Westbrook, Durant, Ibaka, you got to applaud this team. In some ways, they actually still had a chance to push this team to the NBA Finals. But you're playing against a defending champs, man. You got to be absolutely perfect, and unfortunately, OKC wasn't able to do that in at least one of those five, out of those 7 games that were played in this series.
It's really an unfortunate thing for Oklahoma City Thunder because everything is in flux now. Low 3-1 lead in the series. People want to start calling you choke artists and the whole nine, and now Durant's free agency, that becomes an issue. But there are a lot of great things that happened for OKC this year that I really think we need to look in totality. And again, I feel awful for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and especially their fans, which is just such an amazing fan base in general. But listen, they're still very young. Very good chance Durant does come back at least for 1 year. Steven Adams has proven to be a great addition to this team, and obviously he's not new, but just he really is maturing into his role. Westbrook seems to, again, taking that next step. I think he still has another step to go when it comes to playoff basketball, but he's definitely getting there. And I gotta say, kudos to Billy Donovan and the job that he did this year. Went head to head with some of the greatest out there. And taking out Popovich in the semifinal, and then pushing this Golden State Warriors team to the 7th game. The future is very, very bright in OKC in general, but obviously a lot of it hinges on Durant coming back. But again, this was a amazing series to watch. Heartbreaking on their behalf to see them not being able to close things out and pull it out. They have some things that they're going to have to address, especially with that 2-guard position with Roberson. I just don't think he can be that guy for them. But other than that, again, I had nothing but positive things to say, despite them not being able to close out the Golden State Warriors.
We talk about this being an amazing series for the Oklahoma City Thunder, an amazing run in this year's NBA playoffs. But I mean, in totality, if you really think about this, given the tumultuous offseason that the Oklahoma City Thunder started with Scott Brooks being let go as the head coach, I really think that you look at this season in itself, and it really is only masked by the fact that there was so much other things going on, preferably the Golden State Warriors going on their historic record, the San Antonio Spurs going on their historic record. So ultimately, all eyes were fixated on these two teams in the Western Conference. You couple that with the fact, Shaw, that everybody said that the Western Conference took a step back with regards to the bottom, 4th teams. And then you see a team like the Portland Trailblazers coming up. So we didn't give a whole lot of credit and credence to what the Oklahoma City Thunder was able to do. And to your point, when you mentioned regarding Billy Donovan, let's remember, he is a first-year head coach coming straight from the college ranks. And to do what he did with this collective group, I know everybody looked at this team and said that this is a playoff-bound team. This is a team that should dominate, their division. But again, we've seen this dynamic before where, you've got two alpha dogs who clearly are finally within sync with each other, and they're finally healthy. Let's keep in mind, when Cantor, Waiters, and Singler and this collective bunch came over to OKC, this team was not healthy with Durant and Westbrook. So you can actually make the argument this is the first full year that they actually played together and made this kind of run. And I'd be hard pressed to think that the Oklahoma City Thunder is not going to put as much emphasis and effort to try to keep this core group together. I agree with you that there should be some changes made to the roster, but the whole point of them taking that chance, rolling that dice, was to put those supplemental parts together. And this is kind of the fruits of their labor, getting to the Western Conference Finals within 1 game of possibly playing for an NBA Finals. I just think that if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, you basically need to do as much as possible to maintain at least 95 to 96% of the current roster that you have, tweak a little bit, but make sure that the guys that you're playing with are the heavy hitter guys, the guys that should be still a part of this run moving forward.
I mean, again, there's not much question about their commitment to Durant and bringing him back, at least for the 1-year deal. I think, when Westbrook then becomes a free agent as well, going into next season, into next summer rather, I think this is what you're going to see happen with them. But again, it is going to be about those supplemental pieces. Who comes in now? Do they tender an offer and try to keep Deion Waiters? Do they pick up the team option on an Anthony Morrow? They got Randy Foye. he didn't really do anything for them in the postseason or even the regular season for that matter. Is that somebody that you even bother with, trying to, or again, is it really just time to recruit? And now the question even in that is in recruiting. If you're a free agent looking at this team, seeing them get to the Western Conference Finals, but Durant and Westbrook are both free agents next year, does that encourage other free agents to sign? Well, you know what? I'll sign for 1 year and we can see what's happening. Or do they try to get, and commit to 3 and 4 year deals too? Lots of influx in here for the Oklahoma City Thunder.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Our segment of The Drop is we're discussing the Oklahoma City Thunder. Their season comes to an end. Unfortunately, it's time for them to just go on and get. So we're kind of trying to depict a little bit about where the future lies with this team moving forward. Shaw, let me ask you this question, because I don't think that this is probably going to get discussed too much, simply because if you think about this team's dynamic, the Ibaka, Westbrook, Durant union, so to speak, has managed to be playing in at least 3 Western Conference Finals with only 1 trip to the NBA Finals for them. But I got to start wondering, Shaw, at what point do you really start looking at Ibaka and what he should be bringing to the table for this Oklahoma City Thunder team, where if you're talking about them looking to tweak and looking to figure out a way to make sure that Durant stays, could he be a plausible piece that's being used to trade to upgrade in that position? Because quite frankly, Shaw, defensively, I think he's taken a step back, and offensively, I think he's about as stagnant as you could possibly be for a 4 guy with the athleticism and the basketball savvy that he's had for so long. He reminds me a little eerily of like Nicholas Batum until he found a new home when he played when he got the deal from the Portland Trailblazers and really kind of stepped it up due to playing with Terry Stotts. Outside of that, he was just kind of meandering through the NBA with just that one part to his game. And I feel like this is where we are with Ibaka. And at some point, you got to wonder if this collective dynamic, and I think to some degree, Shaw, part of the reason why Presti made the move to send Harden, on that trade, aside from money-wise, is that they had confidence that Ibaka can somewhat fill that void to be that third piece, that dynamic should be a good dynamic for this core moving forward.
I think that's a great point. I think Ibaka is somebody they can definitely shop in the trade market to see if he can bring them back some supplemental pieces or a couple of guys perhaps. But the question that I have to that now, too, is that he's another guy who's going to be entering his final year of a contract. So teams, trying to give up pieces or assets for him would then have to be okay or be reasonably sure that he would re-sign with them following into the next season. But I think we've talked about Ibaka on this show throughout the season, especially when we highlighted the Thunder a couple months ago. And you're right, he hasn't lived up to the hype that Presti and the organization wanted. They really thought he was going to be that third guy on a consistent basis, maybe be 15 and 8 a game and, 2-3 blocks a game and all of those things. And that just hasn't presented itself. I think he did play well in these Western Conference Finals, did have a little bit of resurgence, so to speak. But if the Thunder were going to do anything to kind of ensure their future, he's definitely a piece that I think could maybe attract them a couple guys if he'd be willing to sign with that team moving forward after the next.
I think the other thing as well too, Shaw, on this point that we're talking about with regards to Ibaka, is I really believe too that there's going to be an interesting scenario that's going to take place moving forward. Because if you're Billy Donovan and you've seen the way that Steven Adams has performed, I honestly do not believe that you should be sharing minutes with him and Enes Kanter. I really believe that Enes Kanter, to me, he's a dynamic player, still more so on the offensive end of what he could bring defensively. But this guy also rebounds the basketball. I think he rebounds the basketball better than Serge Ibaka. I mean, if you probably look at the numbers, given when Enes Kanter has been on this basketball team and rebounds per minute, from an analytics perspective, I think that he gives better production for the Oklahoma City Thunder than Serge Ibaka. So what this tells me is if you're Billy Donovan and you're still working with this same roster, whose minutes should Enes Kanter be eating? And quite honestly, I feel like if Ibaka is not going to be that defensive intimidator that he was first recognized for when he came into the NBA, to supplement him for the 10 or 12 points per game that he does probably bring to the table, you easily get that with Enes Kanter, who can still play that 4 or 5 position. I feel like those minutes should be coming out of Ibaka more so to get Kanter on the floor. And maybe that dynamic of Kanter and Adams, we saw it in this series, that could be a lethal combination. And then Donovan, given more time, can figure out a way to space that. Now you've got Durant if he decides to stay. You've got Cantor and Adams collectively on the floor. There's not a rebound that cannot be had that would not go to Thunder's way, just simply because Cantor, as an offensive second chance producer, to me will be at a better clip than what you're getting from Ibaka.
Well, and I think you have a point there because Cantor is a guy who they readily sought after. He got that deal from Portland, and then they matched it, and they didn't want to let him go. And they got him to accept a secondary role coming up the bench, but he might be ready for a prime role. I think it was a competition between he and even Adams this year, whether or not who was going to start. And Donovan elected to go with Adams because he wanted to have the defense on the floor to start each single game. But you're right. I think Cantor, if he can, especially if he can improve from the defense side of things, brings so much offensively consistently, even hitting the mid-range jumper and can now extend out to the three-point line, just like Ibaka is now as well. But I think Cantor just seems to be a little bit more consistent. But it's where he lacks defensively, where teams see him and their eyes get really big. They want to run him in pick and rolls immediately and then have him switch on to the ball handler, and they know that they're going to be able to get some penetration going to the rim. He needs to be able to be at least serviceable on the defensive side of the basketball, not just rebounding, but just staying in front of guys and contesting shots and understanding that he doesn't need to block everything. Just stay in front of people. And I think that will give OKC Thunder a lot more ammunition to work with when it comes to Cantor.
How much does this sting for you, Shaw, when from the Oklahoma City Thunder perspective? I mean, is it enough ammunition that we can see an even fiercer Oklahoma City Thunder team? Or will this team really kind of languish a little bit in the fact that they had this chance and this opportunity essentially could be looked at as being blown? I don't want to use the choke word because I don't think it's fair for what this team basically did in this series, and more importantly, what they did in this season. I will say though that when it mattered the most, guys just didn't step up, or guys just couldn't hit those key shots. In an emotional outburst, you could look at it and just call it choking. Out on the blacktop courts in the streets and the ruckers and stuff, you could call it choking. But I think that it would be doing a disservice to the Oklahoma City Thunder to acknowledge that, because we knew that going against the Golden State Warriors, they were not going to just walk over, and the Warriors were not going to lie down. It just came down to when the Warriors got hot, could the Thunder figure out a way to flame them out? And unfortunately, they couldn't do it. So how does this linger for them?
Well, I think, that's the thing we really need to look at here, because the choke word is very, very strong. They weren't able to close things out, but they lost to a team that won 73 games, is also the defending champion, and has two of the best shooters we've ever seen in the history of the game right now. So you got to give Golden State their credit in this situation. But to your direct question, I think that the Thunder are going to come back immensely strong. It all is going to hinge on obviously what Durant does. But if you're looking at this now in its totality, Durant, if he signs that 1 year deal, Westbrook has a 1 year left, Ibaka has 1 year left. I think that trio tries to give it one more shot, and they come out like gangbusters next year, get some supplemental pieces around them, and really give a good run at this thing going into next season. Donovan in the second year. That's where I think the Thunder team is going to try to galvanize themselves and really try to move forward. I don't think that they're going to, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And, they're going to have that regression. I think, they're very resilient, as we even saw them in Game 7, because that very easily could have been a rout and a coronation for the Warriors, if you will. But OKC was in that game really until the final 5 minutes, or even to the final 2 minutes before that Ibaka foul. And I just feel like this team is going to be right there. But before we, end the segment, I just want to get your opinion, point blank. What do you think KD's going to do? We've had some feedback on Twitter. Everybody, some people making jokes. He's going to go to the T-Wolves. Some people saying the same thing. He's going to sign the 1 year deal. People in Miami saying he's going there. Obviously, there's the Boston rumors, the DC rumors. What do you think Durant does before it's all said and done?
I really think that there's not enough time for Kevin Durant, unless he would have already made his mind up about this basketball team and his future with this basketball team. He would have gone ahead and made that decision. I do believe that he's going to buy himself some time, and I think he's going to probably do a 1 year deal, maybe a 2 year deal, with the 1 year being an opt-out. I don't see them probably doing it. But if you are the Oklahoma City Thunder, you take what you can get from this. This is not about the market as much as it is about the organization recognizing the window of opportunity and playing with greatness. Kevin Durant is one of the great players in the game of basketball right now. You just don't allow that to walk away. And there's no visible signs that the organization has done Kevin Durant dirty or did him wrong, even from when he was playing in Seattle. So to me, I think that he's going to do right by the organization and give it 1 more year. You can't just walk away from doing what this team has done not just this past season, but collectively over the last 3 or 4 years. And maybe after, if let's say he was a free agent when it was the trifecta of them, Westbrook and Harden, I could have probably seen Durant possibly talking about, you know what, I'm shaking off of this tree because I don't like what just happened. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're taking away a piece that should be helping me win a championship. But look at what this organization has done for Kevin Durant, and more importantly, what it's done for the other great players that they have on this team. They've really gone out of their way to understand the window of opportunity that they have, and I think that they've done as good a job as you can probably see from other organizations, which is hard pressed for me to think that Durant is just going to simply walk away from that. Just because, there could be possibly more money or endorsements or, whatever the case may be. We've seen guys hesitate, kind of go out there and, they do what's the trend. Durant doesn't come off to me as a person that follows a trend. I think he's a trend setter, but I think he also understands what he has, and I think he's going to decide to stay.
Yeah, I like it. And I think we're on the same boat, something that I've been saying from the very, very beginning of the year. The 1-year deal seemed like the most plausible thing for him to do. The Lakers rumors always seemed crazy to me. The DC rumors didn't necessarily sound crazy, but definitely we see them take that regression that they had this year. And then given just the kind of cerebral guy that we know Durant to be, the loyalty that he has within himself, obviously with his mom and all of those things too, his relationship with Russ, there is no issue there despite what people continuously want to say. I definitely see the same thing happening. KD stays 1 year. I like maybe even the option, maybe signs a 2-year with a player option, and then they can decide what's going to happen after that. But it would be a shame to see the Thunder break things up, especially after such a miraculous and great run this season.
Definitely. And so, unfortunately, like all great runs, the run for the drop comes to an end, at least now, before we go into the NBA Finals. The Toronto Raptors, the Oklahoma City Thunder. What a hell of a season both of these teams and organizations have had, their fan bases have had. But unfortunately, and we regrettably would have to do this as well, too. It's time for these two teams to just
go on, get.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop. Time now to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Now, let's give it up for the Memphis Grizzlies. They find a way to get rid of Lionel Hollins. They find a way to basically excuse Dave Yeager. And you know what? They've actually made a pretty interesting move, now hiring a former Miami assistant head coach, David Fizdale, to be now the head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I like this move for them. I think Fizdale is a guy who's been looking for a job. You've heard his name kind of in whispers, if you will, for the last 2 or 3 years, and finally a situation has presented itself. He's been, really the catalyst behind what Miami's done defensively over the last few years anyway. And I think this is just a coming of age time for Fizdale. Again, the only caveat to this where I think it's bad is that it also means Patrick Ewing did not get the job for the Memphis Grizzlies, so he then has to wait another long time until he gets another opportunity. But I think Fizdale should be a good match for Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad, like you just said, regarding Patrick Ewing not getting this position. I'd like to think, though, that at some point Patrick Ewing is going to position himself with a basketball team that really recognizes what he brings to the table. But again, I think it's just all the politics of the NBA. I just really do hope that Patrick Ewing does get the nod at some particular point one day. Listen, I would have probably liked to have seen him maybe be the head coach of the Houston Rockets or maybe even the Philadelphia 76ers. But this is what happens when guys like to crunch the numbers and like to, politic and poly. But we need to start giving show the big man some love, for a change. Speaking of Houston Rockets, how about Mike D'Antoni? Now, it's interesting, Shaw, because we had our man Max Crows talking about this, and we didn't think this was going to be as good a signing as it should be. But hey, let's not knock Leslie Alexander and let's not knock Daryl Morey because clearly we had our crystal balls open. We kind of figured that this was going to happen with D'Antoni being now the new head coach for the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, it was just weird that they was like it was pretty much that it was going to happen. Then they kind of held off on it for a little while as they tried to vet a couple more guys. But as Crow said, they're looking to try to get somebody to be the top assistant to D'Antoni as well, obviously to help him on the defense side of the basketball. So we'll see when that appointment actually comes down. But D'Antoni coming to Houston, I think the biggest caveat to that is that it probably almost assuredly means Howard will not be returning, although we knew he was going to probably opt out anyway. Now he'll probably leave as he did not have a great relationship in LA with him. So now D'Antoni will have to build that system around Harden and whoever else they decide to bring in for free agency or trade.
Does it surprise you maybe the possibility that the Rockets will try to go after Hassan Whiteside?
No, I think that's the most logical choice, especially if you're looking to fill a big man role in place of Howard. If you want to still have something along that same line, he's the next guy out there. I wouldn't rule out them going after Pau Gasol as well too. He's going to be a free agent too. Noah's another guy who's a free agent. Some rumors about him not being happy in Chicago. I think Houston will be very active, but it really does depend how D'Antoni now matures as a defensive coach, if you will, or does he get the appropriate help to help Houston move forward in that next phase of their progression.
Most definitely. All right, now let's go ahead and focus our attention to Philly. It really interesting stuff here, but I think we knew that this was coming at some particular point. Just way too many big men on the roster right now for Philadelphia, and especially now with Philly having to have access to the #1 pick in this upcoming draft. They're now exploring trades to see if they can move Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor. Does it surprise you, Shaw, that they've waited this long for them to be shopping these guys at this particular juncture? Because you still have Joel Embiid, and regardless of whether or not they decide to get Ben Simmons or possibly Ingram, I just felt like they should have been already making this happen a lot sooner than waiting up to this particular point. And now I think with free agency coming around, they may have to postpone this until some movements happen or take place.
Well, perhaps. I think Noel they looked at throughout the season. I think there was even a rumor about Okafor potentially going to Boston at the trade deadline. They were looking at that situation as well. So I think they've had exploratory talks, but nothing serious. Now it seems to be that they are ready to really make this move one way or the other. If not one, maybe even both of those guys, as they think Embiid will come over. They still have Dario Saric coming over from Europe next year, and he's going to be like a stretch forward, if you type of will. And then they also have obviously the #1 pick in this year's draft. So lots of options in Philadelphia. There's another rumor that they're going to be going after DeMar DeRozan as well. So they're going to be very, very busy one way or the other. But I do feel like you will be able to get Noel and Okafor for the relatively cheap. I don't know if Okafor will be as cheap as Noel is, but I think if you're a team out there searching for big, these guys can obviously be had.
Yeah, Shaw, what about this as an interesting scenario? Because remember now, the Boston Celtics have their lottery pick access because of the Brooklyn Nets. What if the Boston Celtics, if they're really high on Ben Simmons, possibly trying to make a move to trade up to get to that #1 position to get a Ben Simmons, and possibly giving up some of these multiple draft picks that Danny has stashed away to even and possibly pick up a Nerlens Noel type of deal, which to me might work out for both parties, because they still have the opportunity to get maybe a player that they're looking for, but at the same time it gives Philly access for them to do that rebuilding process, which clearly is what they're going to need. They need depth on that roster. They need to get young, but they need to get quality young very soon.
Well, I think that's an interesting, take on it, because I don't know if Boston could be able to move up and get Noel at the same time. So it was going to be one or the other, and I'm sure Philadelphia holds Noel and Okafor in high regard. Boston's pick, just out 3, maybe is what they could potentially use to try to get a deal sweetener, and maybe if they get another team involved, and obviously maybe include some players too. I don't know if 3 and Smart gets you, the #1 pick. I doubt that seriously. But I think Ainge and the Celtics are going to be very, very creative and know that Philadelphia is willing to make moves, obviously with the Colangelos over there now as well too. Like I said, something is going to happen. I think with both of those franchises and both of those rosters, we'll have to wait to see if it happens together.
All right, let's go ahead and switch gears, Shaw. Bradley Beal, he is seeking a max deal, and it sounds like the Washington Wizards are inclined to oblige to that acquiesce thought process. Do you think Beal is considered a max deal type player? And if not, if you're the Wizards, where do you go from there if you don't go to Beal as a max player?
Well, I think that's exactly your point. Is what else are they going to do? He's their guy. He's their draft pick who they've invested in. Yes, he's had his injury woes and problems over the years, but he's somebody who Wall has a natural kinship with as well. And they do make an admirable 1 and 2 combination when Beal is healthy. I don't know if they have a lot of options out there to fill Beal's role. And in free agency, again, DeRozan is the name. If you're looking for a 2-3 type position on that wing, he's somebody that you can try to go after. But I don't know if you'd go there and play with Wall when it comes down to it. So I think Washington's kind of has their hands tied here. Listen, they know now that they're out of the Kevin Durant running, if you will. So go ahead and max Beal out, and hopefully he can get better, and then maybe bring in another free agent as well. All
right, Shaw. Now the All NBA and All Defensive teams have been announced. What stands out for you regarding these announcements? Which, did we get it right? And who should get the most big congratulatory praise for being selected on these teams?
I think it's DeAndre Jordan. The fact that he's on both of those teams as what be the equivalent of the starting center. The first team All NBA, I think, is a more surprising selection, I think, for me overall. And I guess I just didn't see that coming especially when you look at guys like Cousins and Drummond or even Whiteside, who could have maybe gotten that nod. But Jordan got first team All NBA, and I didn't see it coming. Then him getting first team All Defense when he didn't even finish ahead of Whiteside in All Defensive Player voting this year. That was a little bit shocking too, because you'd figure Whiteside would have obviously been first team All Defense if he was second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. But c'est la vie. The voters did what they did, and this is kind of where we're at. The only thing else that stands out to me is DeMarcus Cousins is the only player on the All NBA teams whose team did not make the playoffs.
We've been robbed. We've been robbed.
Yeah, Cousins did not make the playoffs, and then Jordan is the only guy who wasn't an all-star on these teams. So go figure, man. Some crazy stuff with this voting here.
Definitely, man. Crazy stuff, man. Great stuff as always, Shaw. One final thought, and this is obviously as we end off coast to coast, but as we transition to the ending of our show, the NBA community obviously suffered a tragic loss. Bryce Dijon Jones, who was came from a come up. He was undrafted, worked hard, put that work in, came on board for the New Orleans Pelicans after Eric Gordon suffered another season-ending injury. Really helped this season-ending injury, but suffered an injury where he was gone for a good portion of the year. Really helped that basketball team. Got on a 10-day contract, then got fully signed and extended. Unfortunately, was shot and killed with a situation that it was an altercation, I think, involving him and his baby mother's boyfriend, something in reference to his daughter. But anyway, Shaw, without getting into specifics, I mean, everybody can go online and check it out. It's just really tragic. A young guy, 23 years old, really worked hard. Probably saw his future being an intricate part for a professional basketball team, something I'm sure that he longed to do, making his family proud. Haitian descent, to lose him in the manner that it was lost, just really tragic and very sad. And again, we just want to express our condolences because, the NBA community, again, has lost a really vibrant, great guy that the Pelicans, a lot of Pelicans players really had praise for and really were fond of him.
Yeah, I think you summed it up. This is a gentleman who really worked hard to get to the spot where he was, and looked like he was going to be a mainstay on that New Orleans Pelican roster for a considerable time. And to have his life cut short the way it was is just something that you don't want to see in any field, in sports, regular life, politics, it doesn't matter. We really need to do something about the gun violence that's out there. And again, we don't have all the details as to exactly what happened with Bryce here, but definitely rest in peace to him. And prayers out to his family and to the NBA community who saw this young man, really put the work in and really looked like he had a bright future. And unfortunately, that was cut short. So RIP Bryce Dijon Jones. And we definitely on the baseline have all our condolences out.
Whoa, Shaw, before we sign off, man, how is it that we went through this whole show and did not give predictions with regards to this NBA Finals? It's only right. We can't just rely on just Porscha, even though what she gave us was excellent. But I'm sure our listeners would love to get our perspective of who we think is going to be hosting the O'Brien Trophy when it's all said and done. So go ahead, Shaw. You let me know who really is going to walk away with this title.
I was almost a major whoopsie on our parts there. So definitely, salute to you for bringing that back up there, man. And I'm gonna go with the Golden State Warriors in 7 games. I just feel like Golden State was a team that I picked at the beginning of the season. I did predict the Cavs and Warriors meeting up again, so I got to go with my original prediction, Golden State in 7. And my dude, what do you got? Cowspiracy theory says
Well, not much of a Cowspiracy theory. It should be a Shawspiracy theory because you're trying to steal my thunder here. But let me put this caveat out there. I do think that the Golden State Warriors will win this series. I think that they're going to win this series in 6 games. Maybe not 7. I probably would lean more to 7 than I would to 6. It wouldn't surprise me. I think it depends on how dominant the Golden State Warriors can actually look to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I will say this. I really don't want, if the Golden State Warriors do win this title, I do not want to hear anybody, disrespecting the game that Steph Curry brings to the table. Because if you realistically think about it, Shaw, even though they didn't win against the San Antonio Spurs, if you're arguably going to tell me that Steph Curry against Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James within the course of any NBA final, any NBA playoff run, and he still winds up being the champion, I'd be hard pressed to tell me that he should not be considered one of the great players in this, and you should not discredit what this Warriors team did with what Steph Curry has brought to the table. That's just me.
Absolutely, man. Hey, man, locked and loaded NBA Finals. They will begin very, very soon. And we'll be there, like I said, checking in all the way. So make sure you stay tuned with us, man. Great show, man. Thanks for doing it with us.
Most definitely. So for the baseline, Kyle, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And we'll catch up with you next time.